Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. We got a full show today. This is fun. We haven't done this in a very long time. If you joined us for the Twitter Spaces earlier, you know we've been talking today. There's a lot of shit going on. But before we dive into the action, I am Ron Luce. I am joined by a lot of J's, so this is going to be fun. Joey, Joe, and Juice. It's the Triple JR show. That's what today is, apparently. But Joey Ricotta, Juice, the Juice Man himself, and Joe Maris. Gentlemen, baseball's back. Our first time recording a show since baseball's back. And it's good to be with you guys. How's everybody today on this beautiful Friday evening?
Doing great, Ron. This is awesome, man. We did the spaces earlier, and now we're back here and we can see everybody's beautiful face again on here. So I'm excited for this. This is going to be great. We made one move, so let's talk about it.
We did, and we will touch on that here in a minute. Joe, I haven't seen you or Juice in forever. I'm curious to know how you guys are doing.
Good. Baseball's back, man. There's nothing to complain about. It's a long time coming. It's just good for – it's just, that feeling of seeing baseball is back. It's just great.
It feels like spring. Like that to me, that's like the unofficial announcement of spring is here. Mm-hmm. Like baseball's in like kind of the near sight. You know what I mean? Like you can almost reach out and grab it. It's good stuff. Juice, the Juice Man himself. How are you, my friend?
Good. It's refresh season, right? Everybody's sitting there pulling up and down with your Twitter feeds, trying to figure out who's going where, and yeah, it's fun. It is. It's good to have baseball back. I'll say this. We're going to dive into the signing and have faith. Remember, just because they sign one person doesn't mean they don't sign another, but who knows? It'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. Either way, it's just good to have it back, as Joe said. Baseball's in the air, man, real soon.
It is good to have it back, and I am, for one, very, very excited about having baseball back. But gentlemen, let's talk about some stuff today. I think a good place to start. Obviously, baseball's back. CBA has been agreed upon. I think everybody's seen enough of it on Twitter. We're not going to dive into all the specifics. We just know baseball's back. That's all we gave a damn about. But David Ross extended. He is going to be the Cubs manager at least through 2024. There is an option for 2025 on the new contract as well. So he is locked up for the foreseeable future. With the boys in blue up on the north side, which I think is a good move. But gentlemen, that's where I'm going to turn the first question to you guys. How do we feel as a collective group here at Cubs on Tap about David Ross being the Cubs manager for, again, at least the next 3, maybe 4 seasons?
I feel good about it. Oh, sorry, Juice.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I feel good about it. He's coached 2 seasons, and both of those seasons have not been normal by any stretch of the term. I think the telltale sign of a good coach on a not so great team is just how hard they play, how much fun they're having. And I think if you're watching the second half of 2021, that just jumped out at you through the TV, and that goes to coaching and also the players as well. But a lot of it goes to coaching. So I think it's a great signing, and I'm curious to see what he does when a better team arrives, whenever that is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what culture he kind of builds now that that old team that won the World Series is kind of out, kind of hits the reset button as to, how he wants to build it and what he stresses and how he's able to work with Jed Hoyer in the future to get players that fit his kind of mold and the way he wants to, grind the lineup out and make decisions that, switch, double switches and things like that. Just a matter of like how he wants his roster constructed, I think is the kind of back and forth he'll have to use Jed Hoyer for. It'd be interesting to see, like Joe said, when he has a normal season, got to feel bad for the guy because, like you said, 2020, not normal, 2021, not normal either. And it'd be interesting to see kind of down the line what he's able to get out of the young guys too, as they come up. If he's able to, suck a lot of the talent out of them and kind of develop, I think is an interesting part considering, he is a very intelligent, well-respected man throughout baseball. It's going to be interesting to see what plans he has for the young guys to develop and become, top end players in the league. Because as we know, you build a lot through the draft, and no matter what sport we're talking about. And the Cubs have a really talented farm system, so now it's their turn to, develop these guys, get them up to the major league level so they have success as soon as they can. And then you add with the free agents. And that's kind of where we're at right now to kind of round it all out, just to kind of figure out what his roster is going to look like. But he's done a good job. I think he's learned a lot on the run too. And until, he has a team that's well respected and a contender, I don't think we learn too much until, these younger guys come up. But with that said, I was all for bringing David Ross back. I think that he's a great culture setter, and I think that he's a really smart man who's learning through this whole process too. He wasn't a manager to start, and now he's, gotten this job with, the Cubs and a team he won the World Series with, and hasn't had normal seasons and kind of been learning on the job. But I think with all that said, he's done a really good job of setting the pace for the dugout.
Yeah, agreed. And Joey, I also want to hear your thoughts here too. But Joe, I want to point out the one thing really quick that you said that I think is important is that the 2 seasons that Ross was manager were very weird. Like 2020, obviously shortened season, 60 games because of the COVID-19 pandemic and everything like that. And then in 2021, again, probably the most epic sell-off in like recent memory at any MLB trade deadline. I think the only one that can even match it was the Miami Marlins that one year that they really went up and went for it, and then they just blew the thing up halfway through the season. Like that's it. And difference was the Miami when they just tried to throw it together and make it work, and it didn't work. Like these guys won a World Series here in Chicago. Like it was a very different trade deadline, and like he had them playing well, and them being the new guys that were there, the Patty Wisdoms and the Schwindells of the world. They played pretty well down the stretch. Sure, they weren't winning a lot of games, but like they were still somehow entertaining to watch. And I think a lot of that was David Ross establishing a culture. So I think that is super important that I wanted to point out that you had to share, Joe. But Joey, thoughts on David Ross remaining Cubs manager?
I mean, you guys touched on just about every point that I would probably make. I mean, honestly, I'm happy. I'm glad that he's back. I know people, as I wrote about in the article when the news kind of broke, I think that people are critical sometimes of his in-game management and some of his lineup decisions, like pre-game lineup decisions. But I think, like Juice and Joe and you guys have kind of mentioned, like this has kind of been a learning curve for him. Might not have been the experience that he wanted to gain, like the way that he gained it, I guess, but definitely got a lot of good experience from this. And nothing has been normal, like you guys have said, from his tenure so far as manager. But to that point, like he got those guys, rallied the troops, like in the second half with creative players, like Frank Schwindel and those guys. Like these guys felt like creative players. Rafael Ortega's hitting walk-off bombs. Like if you can motivate guys like that to outproduce what their expectations are, hey, that's a guy that I want in the dugout. And we've seen historically how well, like former catchers, they turn into really good managers. And so it gives me hope that like he's going to take what he's learned over these last couple seasons. And I mean, let's not forget 2020. Yes, it was a shortened season, but they finished first place in the NL Central. Yes, they got the early exit, by Miami, lost 2-0 in that series. But hey, I mean, if they don't go on that 11-game epic losing streak or whatever, we might not have even seen a sell-off. And sometimes you just can't predict those type of like droughts. And let's be honest, they didn't have the pitching depth that they needed last season. And when we needed guys like Arrieta to step up and close the door and like stopgap some of these like long losing streaks, he couldn't do it. He was pretty much toast. Can't put all this on David Ross. So I really like the extension.
Yeah, and kind of to your point there too, Joey, right? Like the Cubs were buyers, quote unquote, going into early June. Like there was discussions of the Cubs actively buying at the trade deadline, and then magically, and I mean magically, they go on that crazy losing skid ironically after the no-hitter of the Dodgers, and then immediately the narrative changes, like you said. So I think that's an incredibly perfect way to put it. And going back to a point that you said, this is how I'm going to transition the topic here, is David Ross building his roster and how he wants it to look. I think that he had a head start in working with Jed because of being in the front office after retiring and being there with Theo and Jed. I think he created that kind of camaraderie with those guys, that from more of like being like a manager and like a front office member versus like a dude on the field and being a actual player. And I think that benefits because there is no like, I need to learn how Jed operates and vice versa. They know how each other operates. They've been with each other for quite a few years now. And I think I'm in agreement with all of you. I think this is a good move. I think Ross has done a nice job as manager. It's not his fault the roster's constructed the way it was and the sell-off happened the way it did. I think, and he's a young manager. Like you said, I think it was you, Joey, like that mentioned about like his in-game decisions and stuff. Sure, he's also a young manager. Like you need to learn by making mistakes. It's going to happen, and that's something that as this team grows with all the youth, like that's just something that he'll grow to. And I think it's a perfect match made in heaven. But roster construction, because I wanted to transition that point because it is free agency, boys. Free agency's back. It's weird because Twitter Spaces earlier we were talking heavily about Carlos Correa, and apparently, according to Ken Rosenthal, the Cubs are not totally out on him, but the Cubs got their guy, like Joe Maris said on Twitter. And Drelton Simmons, a player that has only exceeded an OPS plus of 100 3 times in his career, has signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with value incentives with the Cubs. Good depth piece, great glove. He's a 4-time Gold Glove winner. He's a Platinum Glove winner. So he's got the defensive side down pat. I don't think that's the concern. I think he's a good depth piece. And it allows the Cubs to at least get interesting, and maybe they do still pursue Carlos Correa. But maybe, just maybe, they go get an Anthony Rizzo, a Kyle Schwarber, perhaps a gently used Nicholas Castellanos. Don't mind if I do. Who knows? But initial reactions before we go down rabbit holes here to the Drelton Simmons signing. Juice, I would like to hear from you first, and then we'll just take it around the horn.
Don't hear from me first.
Don't hear from you first. Why?
Sorry, scrolling here.
Well,
zoned out.
You said though, like you said, the Cubs got their DH and Drelton Simmons, the guy that hit 3 home runs last year. They got him locked up.
Yeah, let's hope it's a much better version of what he's done in the past. With that said, he plays a lot of positions. He plays defense. How do you want me to actually frame this? Let's be honest, guys. It comes down to it's hopefully a lower end free agency sign that they make. I'm not going to hint at Correa or any. Maybe this is setting the table for them being in on a guy like Nick Castellanos or thinking about bringing Chris Bryant back. Maybe this is, the way that they've kind of. But for $4 million, it can go both ways. You could look at it as maybe he's playing shortstop and starting, or maybe he's a bench guy. He plays a lot of positions. He's kind of a utility guy. I could see both ways. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everything about everything. As I love Joey's, Twitter handle there. Joey knows nothing. This should be the tagline for all of us. We are just fans who sit here and speculate. But at the end of the day, if you're a Cub fan right now and you see that name come across the ticker, with everything we've read on Twitter about them being in on Carlos Correa, you can't help but not feel shorted, right? You felt like you went up to the concession stand, you were ready to get that hot dog, and you got the one that was rolling on the CVS kind of run or the 7-Eleven run for like 7 days, right? And it's all
the one that nobody wanted.
Yeah. The wrinkly one that's overdone, that when you bite into it tastes like leather. But to try to, put all the toppings on it and pray to God that this isn't what we're going to have at shortstop, it doesn't necessarily mean they're out on a big name free agent. Maybe this is just how they're going to construct their team. Maybe they look at a guy like Nick Madrigal, injury history, and Nico Horner with injury history and go, if these guys go down, we have to have somebody who could step in and play the positions. And maybe they look at a guy like Nick Castellanos as that's going to be their big get. He's only 29 years old. Or maybe you look at bringing Chris Bryant back because he's so versatile and he knows, you know what you're getting out of him. But with that said, all of you heard from Correa and all the murmurs, they had to be in the rumors. They had to be true, right? They had to be going in and talking to him. Maybe it's just a matter they don't want to pay the $300 million like we've read. Now, with that said, I pray to God that this isn't the move that we go, man, the biggest signing we had over was Stroh, and then we went Simmons after the lockout ended, and we're kind of punting on this for the year. At that moment, then you lower expectations, I believe, for what they're going to be this year if this is one of the bigger moves that they make, because let's face it, guys, I said they got their DH tongue-in-cheek laughing, but this would be a bad PR move too for the Cubs to just sit on their hands for forever here and have this be, the move that the splash that they make post lockout. And two, we went over it. We sat 30 minutes here talking about baseball. This is a position player free agency. This is one that you can look at and say there are guys to be had. And next year and the year after that, it's slim pickings, because if you look at what's going to be out there, it's a lot of older, past their prime guys, or guys who are going to be thrown a bunch of money at by their current teams. So this is the time when a guy like this hits the market to do everything he can. And if they don't want to pay $300 million, they don't want to pay $300 million, but you're going to have to find somebody who has that Correa-like output, years down the line when you're contending. And that's what this Simmons thing is. It's hopefully a precursor and not, the move. Because if it's the move, then, man, you're looking at some really angry Cub fans. I'll say that.
Yeah, 100%. And quickly, Joey and Joe, before you guys chip in here on your thoughts with the Simmons signing, Evan Altman on Twitter put it really well. He's at DE Van Altman. Most Cubs fans know who he is. He said, I think he says it perfectly. He says, if $4 million takes the Cubs out of the running for Correa, there are bigger problems. And I agree. Yeah. I think people need to breathe. It's the first signing. And it really is a hindsight, right? Like it's so easy for us, and I say the collective us as like fans of any sport, any team, to like during the off season, as soon as one move happens, you react, right? Like Joey, I'm sure you and I are going to be talking about this on Monday, but like the Khalil Mack trade, and like the Bears are selling off a bunch of guys and getting rid of a bunch of guys. Until you see the plan unfold in totality going into the 2022 season, and this applies for the Cubs as well, we don't really know, right? So I think that's just something to keep in mind as well. Joe, I want to get to you guys though and hear your thoughts about the Simmons signing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there really is much to say about it. I think given the context of all the Correa stuff happening, it makes it feel a lot worse than it really is going to be. The questions it makes me think are like we mentioned, how much is he going to play? Is he going to attempt to be an everyday guy? I doubt it, because right now Nico Hoerner has to be your everyday shortstop because, one, he's mainly an infielder and second base obviously is taken, and the outfield is just packed. Like you can't just keep jamming guys in the outfield, so you have to, Hoerner, like he will play outfield at some point, I'm sure, but right now he's your shortstop and that's fine. But then why are you signing Drelton Simmons? I don't. And to be fair to Drelton Simmons, he's more of a complete shortstop defensively, and Hoerner is a versatile guy. And if you're saying that Simmons is going to be the versatile guy and Hoerner is going to be the shortstop, like looking at them on paper, it doesn't really make sense. But that might end up what they end up doing. So who knows?
Or maybe, and this is just a quick maybe Simmons is the guy to be the backup at short, to allow Nico to move around more, maybe play center, maybe play second, maybe play left, maybe play, you know what I mean? Like maybe that's just another depth piece that allows Hoerner a little more flexibility, depending on what they do at shortstop. Joey, what do you think about the whole thing?
I actually want to bring up this comment too by Lil Yumper here, because this is an idea that I actually was thinking before we hopped on here. I don't know if I even mentioned it, but it's possible that Nico Hoerner could be being baited out there or tossed out there in some potential talks for a trade. Not saying that is the case. I don't even think that that's actually what's been happening here, but it's possible because of all this influx of like middle infielders or second baseman types and shortstop types that we kind of have now. Even you look at the rest of the depth pieces we have, we still have Bodie that's going to be coming back at some point this season too. And I'm not saying like he's a starter caliber player, but he's around as far as like a utility piece. So that's a good point that he brings up, and I just want to touch on that real fast. But as far as this move goes, like you guys touched on a lot of it, pretty much all of it, and I think like Simmons, he makes a lot of sense for the type of pitchers that we have as far as the shortstop goes. Like he's going to play really good defense, whether he's the starter or not. Whenever you use him in the game, like if he's a guy that's coming off the bench as a defensive late replacement, that's a type of guy that you want out there, or even like mid-game. Say the Cubs jump out to like a 4-0 lead. 4-0 lead, and you got Stroman on the mound, and let's say you trust Simmons more at shortstop than somebody else, yeah, put him over there. Like, definitely put him in the game, but it doesn't take him out of the runnings for anything because of the money that they're shelling out to him. It's nothing really compared to the money they have. So, for some Cubs fans out there that, and even friends of mine that are like, I'm done with the Cubs after the signing, please. Like, it's not that serious. Like it's just Drelton Simmons. It's not like at least this is the one positive spin. They didn't overspend for something that you hated, right? Like some long-term crazy deal that potentially like over $300 million deal for Correa, which I'm going to say right now, I don't like the idea of that. Like unless there's an out, like we talked about on the Twitter spaces, unless there's an out, I don't really like the idea of a Correa huge mega deal. So, and also, too, you can look at the rest of the roster. You look at Patrick Wisdom at third base. He's a great defensive third baseman or above average, I would say, defensively.
Solid, yeah.
Yeah, above average. Not like great, but he's not Arenado level, but he's really, really good defensively. Mm-hmm. Is he going to keep up this type of production at the plate that we saw last year? We also saw that he has a tendency to strike out a lot. So there are still some questions there that, like, if he doesn't keep up the pace that he was on, like, as far as home run hitting and stuff goes, if he's hitting around, like, 200 level, that's going to rub some fans the wrong way. It's going to rub us the wrong way. And maybe Horner's playing third base or something. Maybe Simmons spelling at third base. Like, there's a lot of opportunities here, so I'm not going to freak out over this move.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as, like, it's the first domino to fall, right? Like, there's going to be more dominoes to fall. The Cubs are clearly spending money. Like, I would be absolutely dumbfounded if Jed goes out and spends $71 million on Stroh over 3 years and then does nothing else the rest of the offseason with what they currently have. They're going to do something. Are they going to go over the top and try and win it all this year? No. But they're going to build pieces for the future. They're going to strategically bring in guys that they see as a fit going forward. It's a 1-year move for Simmons. It's not Daniel Del Scalzo for 2 years at least. Thank God. But But again, it's just a depth move. And if he's really that bad, oh well, it's $4 million. It's not going to kill the Cubs. They currently sit like 12th in payroll right now. Like they're still pretty low in terms of like where they stand in the league compared to most years, right? We're used to them being, top 6, top 7 usually on any given year. Like there's got to be more moves to be made. It's still early. And if you believe everything you read, and this is one thing I wanted to bring up. Apparently, and this is according to like numerous insiders, right? Like the Olneys and the Hymans and those guys in the world, is that like they said that like pitching and trades are the big focus right now. And I think that's important because we talked about this a little bit on the Twitter spaces earlier. And Joe, I wish you were able to join us, buddy. I know you had stuff going on, but like we talked about it on the Twitter spaces about like, what if the Cubs just go kind of crazy and do more trades to build the roster this year and maybe do less on the free agent market? And I wouldn't be mad about that because, they've been linked to potentially Kevin Kiermaier as more of like a salary dump for the Rays, and the Cubs just take him and let him spend his last few days in Wrigley Field in center field, which I think would be cool. I think he's an Illinois native too, or he's an Indiana native. He's a Northwest Indiana guy. So like, probably would be really cool for him too, as a way to kind of finish out his career. But like, that's something to really consider. Cause we mentioned the idea of like, oh, well, maybe you can talk the Rays into giving you Glass now with also taking Kiermaier for the right package. And maybe that is where a Nico Horner comes into play. Like, I don't know who the second baseman for the Rays is. Like Nico could very well go down there and be, an AL second base Gold Glover every year. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what's going to happen? There's so much that's still going to happen really over just the next 48 hours, let alone like, I'm not even worried about a month from now when the season starts. Like the next 48 hours are probably going to be crazy. The next week is probably going to be pretty busy. So like, it is very much like it's the first domino. I view it as a depth move. I think we all kind of agree on that. It's an insurance policy. He's a good glove, and that's what he does, and that's okay. And if we're being honest, on the infield right now, outside of Wisdom and Horner, like that's your next best glove on the infield right now. And obviously that can change. Obviously they can, pull the trigger on another player, a Correa, and immediately he becomes your best glove on the infield. Maybe they don't pull the trigger on Correa. Maybe they focus the money in the outfield and they go try to bring Kyle Schwarber back. They need a lefty power hitter that fits the bill of what they need. Maybe they go and take a swing and make Ron Luce really happy and go get Castellanos. Who knows? Like there's endless options still that the Cubs maybe make a trade, and that's how they do the kind of their big splash for the offseason is they go get a guy that they say, hey, he's not going to be a free agent for a few years. We identify him as a guy that fits in our mold going forward. We'll go give up a prospect or two to go get this guy to be a part of the future. So certainly a lot of things coming in the future, but guys, that's really the news right now, right?
And
obviously the Correa rumors, things like that. Juice, you got something?
Yeah. And two, just sitting here thinking about what the steps could be, it could mean that because they've signed Simmons, it allows them to go and bolster other parts of the roster because they're looking more or less like maybe Correa is going to be one of the last shoes to fall. We've submitted our offer. Let's bolster that to wait it out to see if he's going to end up being with us. If not, we have Simmons. We have an abundance of middle infield talent that we can run out there. Let's make sure that we don't miss out on an outfielder or, somebody at the corners or maybe a relief pitcher that they're talking or that they're targeted. Maybe this move kind of bolsters the depth and allows them to focus until Correa makes that decision too. Because as you know, he's going to wait for a team to come in and offer maybe he's not able to get that 10th year right now. And maybe the Cubs are sitting in the driver's seat because they've given him the best deal. And now it's I'm not going to take this deal until I know that I can't get that 10th year. So now maybe making that move on Simmons allows them flexibility to wait this thing out. And he is a Boris client, so why it makes a little bit of sense. And now maybe you focus on looking.
I find that hilarious. I'm sorry to cut you off, Juice. All the people that were talking about Boris this, Boris that with Chris Bryant, and then now we're sitting here chasing a Boris client. Like all these Cubs fans are sitting here chasing a Boris client after all this.
Anybody worth anything in baseball usually has him as an agent anyway.
He's a great agent. Like people get mad because the guy has a good agent that will get the most for his client. Like, come on. Like it's nothing to do with the player. It's nothing to do with can't hold that against him. I'm sorry. Continue though, Juice.
No, I know. I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. I think this move could signal that they've identified somebody else in free agency and they've submitted their offer to Correa. And at this point, they're not going above or and beyond for his needs because they know they sit in the driver's seat or they know that they're not. And they've decided, hey, let's move on to Nick Castellanos or Chris Bryant. We want to be at the table for those guys because we've identified that, hey, we don't want to spend $300 million and give him 10 years. But we know that this team is probably going to do it if they wait long enough. It would not surprise me if the Yankees just give him it, right? That's just how the Yankees roll. They're trying to get back towards, contending to be a World Series champion again. It would make a lot of sense. But at the end of the day here, if you're the Cubs, you submit your offer and you don't go above it because, like we said, there's not a lot of value to those late years of the contract. And you got to play smart when you're very talented at the minor league level right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter, too, of, like you said, Ron, you don't want to back up that middle infield position and you end up having a guy that you would really love to hang on to and be a staple. And then you have this contract that maybe you can't get rid of or you just can't elevate the person because you're already paying X amount of dollars to Correa. So like I said, I hopefully this is just the precursor move to the move, and then it'll really if the Cubs go out and get Nick Castellanos or Chris Bryant in the next 3 days or whatever 48 hours, I think that pretty much signals that they're out on Correa, right? I mean that kind of waves the white flag that they tried and they just were unable to. But this move allows them to pursue other positions and hold their free agency in their own hands, opposed to waiting on Correa to be like, yeah, I'm going to play for you. That's you got to be active, and when the market changes like this, or you hear things, you got to be able to feel the team, and maybe that's what's happening. Who knows?
I really like we said. I really like what you're saying, Juice, about hey, they submitted their offer. What pops into my head is what's the worst thing a gambler does? They chase. After losing bets. Stick with that original bet. Stick with that original offer. They're comfortable with it.
Yep.
They're comfortable with it. I'm assuming whatever offer they gave was super calculated. Hey, if you want this, we can still get all of this in the next years. Stick with it. And if he wants it, he wants it. If he doesn't, it's fine.
If he doesn't, fuck him. No, I'm just kidding. But again, just kind of hammering home the point, Juice, that you mentioned, right, that I brought up with, you don't want to clog up. The shortstop position is arguably the deepest position the Cubs have, other than maybe outfield in their prospect pool. Pitchers getting there too, obviously, guys like Wicks and Killian. And I think we see Caleb Killian in 2022, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But legitimately, they are deep in their top 17 as of today. And this obviously can re-rank and move as the season gets closer, but their top 17, they have 5 shortstops in their top 17 prospects, according to MLB.com. If you take it a step further, they have 4 of those guys in their top 11. And that's because James Triantos is considered a shortstop. I think ultimately we see Triantos potentially at third base, but he is listed as a shortstop. And same thing with Preciado. I know they've been playing him at third as well as short a little bit.
They're playing Triantos at second too a little bit now too, Ron.
Are they? Okay.
It opens up a little. He opens up the door.
He's a nice player. I like James Triantos. I remember watching his highlights, writing up his draft thing last summer, and yeah, I like him.
His hands are so quick, man. And
he's a good-looking player. I'm a big fan of James Triantos. But nonetheless, they have the depth at the position. And let's just call a spade a spade. One of them is at least going to become an average MLB player. You would have to think, right? One of these guys is at least going to turn into something. Whether it's Christian Hernandez, paling to the baby A-Rod comparisons, whether it's Ed Howard becoming that guy, even though I think maybe Ed Howard's ultimate long-term future is at second base. Who knows? Maybe it's Preciado coming up. Maybe it's Triantos is the dude that comes out of left field and ultimately becomes that guy. Who knows? But you don't want to block for multiple years. I have no problem if they were to get Correa at 7 years with an opt-out after 5, because realistically, he is your everyday shortstop for at least the next probably 2 to 3 seasons. And then if a guy comes along that you're like, then maybe you do bump him to third base for the last couple of years of that contract. Or maybe you just play by committee at shortstop and the other guy DHs on the other day if you're really that deep. Who knows? But you don't want to block your system for 10 fucking years. That, I get Carlos Correa is a great player, but at 27, he's a great player. But when he gets to 34, 5, 6, and 7 in those last 4 years of that 10-year deal, he ain't going to be a great player unless he ages like fine wine. But realistically, if we're playing averages and we're betting men here, and I know all of us have placed at least one bet on either our friends over at Bet Rivers or some other sports book, promo code ONTAP, $250 deposit match. Shameless little plug, but we're going to plug it now that mobile sign up is a thing again in the state of Illinois. But I love that way you said it, Joe. You put your bet in, you run with it, and they don't like it. Tough shit. Move on. There's no need to chase Carlos Correa, because if you really are hey, we're chasing him for the bat, there's other bats you can go get to upgrade other areas on this team. Again, I would not be mad about Nicky Two Bags hitting fucking 40 doubles and smoking 40 bombs out onto Waveland Avenue every year. I'm cool with that because he can DH now. The NL's got a DH, baby, and I'm here for it. There's so many options. But let's have some fun with this now, right? We touched on the news. We've touched on some of the good shit. Just a quick mention: Cody Hoyer done for the season. Tommy John. So that's a tough loss for the Cubs. I really think Hoyer was going to take a huge step forward in 22. So I hate seeing that. Intrigued to see who he takes his role in the pen, and maybe that's a good closing question that we can finish the episode with here. But for the time being, I would love to know, and we can go. I'm cool with each of us having that big fish that might be a pipe dream, and then that realistic option. Is that guy in your head for each category, right? That realistic option and maybe the not so realistic option that is either on the free agent market or via trade, if you want to get creative here, that you want the Cubs to target. Because obviously everybody knows my big fish and my pipe dream, but I feel like I've got a very legitimate case for my guy that I think is very realistic. So I would love to hear from each of you guys. And Joe, I know I would love to hear you go first, because I feel like you've got something juicy for me, and I need to hear it. I really do. Well, who's your big fish that's pipe dream, and then who's your realistic option that hey, this makes sense. The Cubs could legitimately do this.
Mm-hmm. It's really tough because excluding Correa, the big fish out on the free agent market is not that big. It's Castellanos, which I'll leave for you. And Schwarber, having Schwarber would be awesome, but it really doesn't do much for me personally. He's great, that's cool. It just doesn't feel like it's going to happen to me. It's just a feeling. I think if anything, the big fish comes in a trade, and it's a pitcher. Who that is, I don't know, but there seems to be a lot of smoke about the Cubs trading for a starting pitcher that throws hard, and that's just something they don't have. Who that is, I have no idea. I couldn't even tell you. But go get a hard-throwing pitcher. They just don't have that. And then they'll fill in the bullpen with some random guys that they always do, like every team does. I wish I had something more exciting for you. But it's just it's tough because there's really not, except for the guys that have just been talked about, all day. So, and I think one thing that we can talk about next after we get through this is the thing that jumped into my mind while we already started the show is, if we're talking trades, something that's going to probably get resumed is Wilson Contreras talks in trades, unfortunately.
True.
So I think we're going to get a lot of that coming up, and I don't like it, but it's going to happen. The talks, at least. I'm not saying he's going to get traded, but. And yeah, we just got in the comments, Tyler, here, Luis Castillo. See, there we go. Oh, it's gone. I think we both try. Oh, we keep both trying to do it.
I got it.
There we go. Do they trade in division? I'm sure the Reds at this point. You don't think they trade in division?
Unless the Cubs come to the table with the best offer.
I don't think that's true.
But I don't think they want to do that.
The Reds, the Reds are not in the greatest position to compete, and anytime soon. So I don't see why they would have a problem trading somebody within the division. But again, you're probably right. If they have a choice to not trade him in the division or not. But Luis Castillo, a guy like him, hard thrower, good changeup, that he would that's what the Cubs need.
And get him in the pitch lab too.
Right. So that I would keep my eye on something like that. The name, I'm sure, will, if that is something that will happen, a name will emerge, and I'll stick to that.
I dig it.
To touch on Luis Castillo real fast, I think he's had some really bad luck here the last year or two too. His stuff is actually way better than his value might be at the lowest that it might ever be for Castillo. So.
I mean, even from the Reds, Sonny Gray too. He's available. Not to say he's a hard thrower by any means, but
yeah. I was wondering too, just to touch on your thought there about getting a power arm. I was looking at this kid Cody Morris with the Guardians system. Maybe and I'm not saying it's him or whatever, but maybe Carter Hawkins, him being here now as the GM, it's Hoyer and him, maybe he can identify some of these prospects, or he's got a good read on some of these Guardian pitching prospects. Maybe they can work a deal with Cleveland, because Cleveland just pumps out these arms. It feels like almost every year, and I feel like they're gonna have somebody that pops up this season at the major league level that didn't have as much success last year, so they're going to feel comfortable with like dealing away one of these prospects. And like Cody Morris is somebody I was looking at that, like he's kind of been, I don't know, I would say late bloomer. I feel like he dealt with some injuries, but like he was like killing it last year. AA, rookie ball, AAA, like he has potential.
Our boy Baseball Booge agrees with you, Joey. I
Yeah,
wanted to bring that up for you
Booge.
while you were talking through it,
Dude,
because he
I
agrees
like
with you.
this kid. Yeah, I like this kid. I don't know why it's that kid, but maybe it's not him, but I just think that maybe there's potential out there to find someone who's kind of like right on the brink of making it to the big league level, and you can kind of flip what you have, you consider a strength for what's a weakness, and then give somebody else, one of your strengths. And I think it'd be like a pretty good pairing with a team like that.
Well, and I think just quickly to jump in and insert my thought here. Maybe that's a big reason why Hawkins was hired with the Cubs, because they saw the success that Cleveland has had drafting and developing pitchers. Sure, they can't always necessarily keep all of them and pay all of them, but like Corey Kluber, Bieber, like they pump out arms. Yeah, they pump out arms in Cleveland. So like that was probably something that Jed really considered when they brought in Carter Hawkins was, hey, he's been in a front office that develops pitching. Look at their two biggest front office hires since Theo and Jed were originally hired back in 2011 have been Kantrovitz and Hawkins. Where do they both come from? Places where they develop pitching like it's fucking candy. Like that's a big thing to keep in mind.
That's what we need.
And that's something that we're starting to see too, right? Like they go get Jordan Wicks. He's already the 6th ranked prospect in the Cubs system. They go get the kid from the Yankees, Alcantara, or not Alcantara. I'm sorry, Vizcaino in the move. They go get Killian for KB. Like they went and loaded up. Yeah, Espinoza is like a high risk, low reward, or vice versa, low risk, high reward kind of guy. Like they went and took a flyer on a lot of these guys, and I think Caleb Killian's going to be sick because apparently, if you believe everything that you read, he's like looks better than he did last season. And this was a dude that like had 2 complete games, a complete game shutout. He had one of the most stupid video game numbers I've ever seen when he was in A-ball for like 4 games. His strikeout to walk rate was 32-1. Like video game numbers, stupid. So I think that's something really interesting. And Joey, I want you to continue because I want to hear your realistic and big fish. But Baseball Booge, our boy, he'd rather have Jonathan VR over Simmons as depth.
I agree with that.
Right. And like what I said earlier about, talking about Simmons as a versatile guy, not to say he can't do it, but VR is like that utility guy. Like he is. He's a switch hitter, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He is. And he's sneaky fast too. He steals. Right. He's like one of the few guys that actually steals bags anymore too.
Right. I mean,
now the bases are going to be bigger. Does that mean more stolen bases?
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting to think about.
I mean that both in a funny and like a serious way too. Like
no, it's 100% serious. I think
more sliding, more base to touch.
Yeah, because I mean, look how many tagouts are bang bang in the MLB. Mm-hmm. That extra inch, 2 inches, for a lot of guys, that's the difference between getting thrown out and getting called safe. Like
that's what she said.
Nice.
But no, you're good. I had to.
But yeah, so Joey, I really do want to hear your thoughts though. Again, thank you, Jake, for jumping in. It's fun side note fact really quick. I hate to take us off topic. We all know this show is going to go at least an hour. I actually met Jake at a Blackhawks game a couple of weeks back. All of a sudden, I'm walking back with a beer in my hand. Or no, I'm sorry, it was a Bulls game. And it was the Saturday night that they played Oklahoma City back in February. It was like the 12th. And all of a sudden I hear Ron, and I'm like looking around, and then I recognize him like, oh, and he's like, Jake, Baseball Boosh. That's right. I'm like, hey, and so we actually got to meet. Awesome dude. I love Jake. Jake's a good dude. We're gonna have to get him on as a guest at some point. But I really want to hear, Joey, what you have to say, because I feel like you, especially with like the fantasy baseball, we were talking about that before you started the show. I'm really intrigued to hear, like, because again, you're calling out Cody Morris, who again we'll bring that back up. Good call, Joey. We'll give you the credit where credit's due here. Like, who is that big fish for you, and then who's that like, hey, this is pretty realistic kind of guy?
Well, just to touch on like another comment that Jake brought up here too, like Mitch Keller has been somebody I've been really liking as far as even fantasy goes. Like I really like Mitch Keller because and he's supposedly throwing like close to 100 right now in like his bullpen sessions. So like if he can figure out the command at all, like I really like Mitch Keller, but I don't know if the Pirates are going to ship him. But we've seen them ship some pretty good pitchers and then them have success elsewhere too. But
Like Tyler Glasnow?
like Tyler Glasnow, like Morton.
Yeah, the list goes on and on. The list goes
Like,
on and on with Pittsburgh.
It's insane, man. Like they just do it all the time. But I don't know if they're going to do in division like we were talking about with Castillo. So I guess I don't know. My realistic guy, my top like guy. Oh, it's so close, man. Because I want to leave Castellanos for you, Ron. I know
you can take him too, but I'm just going to take it over the top because I'm extra like that.
I get it.
How I operate.
Like realistically, like he loves Chicago. Like I think he just makes a ton of sense as far as like what we're trying to do here. Now we have the DH. I know he's a right-handed hitter. We're looking for lefties, but he's a right-handed hitter, but he can play a little bit of outfield and he can DH. And I think he's going to continue to hit for a high average. And we've seen him outside of Detroit. He can hit for power. It's not just Cincinnati. Everybody's so worried about Castellanos, like where he's going to sign for a power hitter, like even for fantasy baseball. They're like, I don't know, the power's not going to be the same. Like his batted ball metrics are incredible. It doesn't matter. Like he's going to hit regardless, even if he hits 28 bombs and hits a ton of doubles. Like that is incredibly valuable. So Castellanos would be my realistic. I guess the pipe dream would obviously be Freddie Freeman, but I'm going to actually spin it and do another realistic kind of pipe dream. So we're looking for lefty power. Matt Olson is supposedly getting shopped to the New York Yankees, right? That is a potential fit for us too.
Oh my God, it would be perfect.
I think the Cubs and A's they trade all the time. The Cubs and A's.
They do. They must have, and I think it's the Kantrovitz connection because he came from the Athletics.
Wow, it makes so much sense. I know his average fluctuates too. Like he's one of those guys that does fluctuate average. The guy can hit 45
30 and 100.
bombs.
Yeah. He's a 30 and 100 guy year in year out, and he's young too. He's only 27.
He's young, and if he hits 250 and gives you 50 home runs, like I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Nobody gives a fuck about his average at that point.
Don't care at all. Like it has exactly the same upside as Schwarber does, except it's a new face. And people are just like attached to the Schwarber idea. And I love Schwarber. I'm not saying I wouldn't want him back, but man, I think that's actually a realistic kind of a pipe dream too, though.
Yeah, I love that. Juice, I want to turn it over to you and make sure you can and jump in here. Actually, hold on. I want to bring this up. I don't mean to cut you off, Juice.
By all means.
Tyler in the comments. A deal for Matt Olson and Ramon Laureano because the Cubs also need a center fielder. Mm-hmm. And Laureano arguably is one of the best center fielders in baseball. Nobody talks about him because he plays in Oakland. He's on a suspension right now, I believe, but like he is. I think he's on. I don't remember how many games it is though, because he served. 60. I think. Yeah. Is it for the start of this season though? I thought he served some of it last season.
I think he did.
Okay, so even if you miss him for a month, whatever. Like the dude's still, in my opinion, a top 6 probably center fielder in baseball right now, if not higher than that, maybe. To be honest,
he'll steal bags too. You talk about speed, he'll steal bags.
Yeah, that's a guy that I like. Juice, I want to hear your thoughts. Who do you got for us?
Yeah, I speak kind of only in realistic opportunities. I'm not going to do pipe dreams because as a Cub fan. In that half full, I don't want to get too excited.
Juice, you're our negative Nani. Never get up for the letdown.
Yeah,
you're our negative Nani.
I'm expecting more or less like for them to reach out to the Padres and take that Hosmer contract off of their hands, and then try to dip into the Padres farm system. And
it's a good one.
I mean, Mackenzie Gore coming off a bad year last year would be a great fit. Get him in there. I mean, CJ Abrams is that's pipe dreams. That kid's going to be he's going to be stellar.
Where's he going to play, though? He's a shortstop.
Right. But, see, they did that when they made the 2016 run, too, though. They got all these guys, and then they repositioned them at different places. It can be done. And who's to say that, guys that are on the roster now, like Madrigal and Horner, are here for a long time? And who's to say that, Ed Howard is somebody who's going to be, a mainstay either. So acquire talent and figure it all out after. That's just but the catcher prospect, Campusolo or something like that.
Campusano.
Yeah.
He's sick.
He's awesome.
You can't expect the Cubs to bet on Miguel Amaya anymore. You can't. With what's going on injury-wise, and if you look up and down their system, they are so short at the catcher position. And that would be a name I would definitely ask for. Who's to say it's going to happen? When you have those contract-eating deals, it's a matter of how desperate the team is that is unloading the contract, and that's who you usually end up getting. But it'd be interesting to see, what they're able to pull from that. And I think, at least for now, this is kind of where you're looking at gaining that traction, because realistically, even if they were to sign Correa and go all, they're not a World Series contender next year. Mm-hmm. So you got to kind of build for the future. And that's kind of a move that you do when you're in the position that the Cubs are in right now. And that'd be great. It'd be, I kind of only speak in those in terms of like a guy. Correa was the guy that I thought kind of was the pipe dream, right? In the beginning. And now it's kind of gained all this traction. And now we're kind of at the point where maybe that's realistic. And I think that that's the move that was pipe dreams for me, because it kind of signaled to the rest of baseball, hey, they're ready to contend. They're ready to contend and to pay players big money again. And that kind of, coupled with, Marcus Stroman coming back on, that was kind of the moves that I thought kind of would kind of re-solidify the Cubs front office with good graces with their fans, because of what happened, with the pillage last year of trading all the guys that won a World Series for you, but also adding and saying, hey, listen, we're committed to winning. And I think the problem with the Cubs right now is, even with Marcus Stroman coming over, we have question marks of, are we willing to win? You got to look, the Stroman contract is extremely tradable. So going into this year, if they don't contend and they get to the deadline and there's a team that's willing to pay 3 blue chip prospects, and there are guys who are willing to, be MLB ready, the year after that. That's the position the Cubs are in right now. No signings other than that right now. That's the position that they're in. So going off the roster now, that is where you look at is, if one more guy comes over and they spend big money, it kind of signals, listen, we look at Marcus Stroman as a pillar for the future, not a good offer in free agency that we stumbled across that can now trade off for even more, free agent or not free farm team prospects, or, more assets at the lower levels. That's what kind of irks you as a Cub fan right now, because you're almost in this, are they for real, or are they, trying to make smart moves to build for the future? And that's what's kind of, that next signing kind of will announce to me and a lot of the fan base on how quick they think they can contend. If it's Correa, they believe that they can contend as early as next year or this year, based on how guys play. It's just a matter of where does Jed Hoyer picture this team this year and then in the future? When does he think they can contend? And the interesting part is, right now, us as fans, we can't sit and say one way or the other.
Yeah, Juice, I'll be honest with you. You soured my mood a little bit mentioning Stroman and trade in the
I'm
same
sorry. The contract is very team-friendly.
It is a very
team-friendly.
Yes, it is it's also a very player-friendly deal, too, because if he outperforms it, he can get played even more in 2 years, when at 32 years old, for a guy who doesn't rely on power, he relies on movement. Like, he's still going to be an effective pitcher at 32 years old. He's not like one of these guys who's going to phase out and burn out at, 33, 34 years old that we see time and time again, i.e. Jake Arrieta. Like, he's not going to be one of those guys. So, fair. I totally understand the point. I do think we see at least one of those trades. Not necessarily the Stroman trade, but like the eating a contract trade. Like, I could honestly, that Hosmer one makes a lot of sense. And it's been rumored as like something the Cubs have thought about too.
For a long time. It's almost to the point where it's like, there's got to be fire. They've probably talked about players before.
Yeah.
Too much smoke.
Yeah, it's and the Kiermaier one too. Like they've been linked to Kiermaier now. It feels like for like 2 years. So like there's got where there's smoke, there's fire. Like there's got to be something there on both of those fronts, really. And I think we could maybe see one of those two trades pulled off in the next week if the Cubs are really trying to like, hey, yeah, we'll take Eric Hosmer to just fill a body and give us some production at first base and platoon with Frank Schwindel for 2022. But you get a couple of prospects that maybe are close to MLB ready that maybe end of 2022, early 2023, all of a sudden we see at the show. So pipe dream. It's Nick, guys. Come on. Like, I want to see him back in blue pinstripes. I want to see number 6 trotting out there. I want to see him telling the reporters every day's opening day. I want to see him fucking swinging for the fences. I want to see a ball nuked onto Waveland. Like, I want Nick Castellanos on the Cubs so goddamn badly, it's not even funny. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. If it does happen, I've already told you guys off air what's going to happen. Ron, I still have a Bender in store in celebration of Stroman signing. We're just going to up the ante if Nick's back too, because I'm going to be over the freaking moon and not going to know what to do with myself. But realistic option for the Cubs to sign in free agency. I'm going to tie this into our little bit here that we mentioned very briefly in passing about Cody Hoyer. I think a guy that's very realistic to come back is one Andrew Chafin. I think that's a very realistic possibility here. I know there's been some kind of tread on Twitter of Cubs fans wanting to see him back, but it makes sense. The Cubs don't have a lot of lefty arms out of the bullpen. The only name I can really think of going into this season that like is a potential guy we see in the bullpen is a guy like Braylon Marquez, but that might not even be till later in the season because the kid hasn't pitched in like 2 years. So that's going to be interesting on that front in terms of like they need a lefty arm in the pen in some capacity. And Chafin is 31, so he's still in a prime age where he's effective. That's very much a guy I can see that comes in and all of a sudden is, kind of the de facto closer. Maybe, if they do by committee with a guy like Rowan Wick, where, those are your two back end guys. They can trade the 8th and 9th respectively. I think Scott Efros is also going to be a guy we see a lot in like the 7th inning this year. I think his name is going to be seen a lot in the Cubs bullpen. I think they really liked what they saw out of him late in the year. So I think that's a realistic move. From a bat perspective, I don't think the Schwarber move is totally out of the question. And the reason I say that is again, he fits needs. It's not just like being like, oh, we just want to see Schwarber back because we miss him. Like he's a lefty power bat. He seemed to have gotten something together leaving the Cubs because the dude went on a fucking tear last season, probably his best career season that he's had to date. And on top of that, like he probably commands a reasonable dollar value because the rumors were, again, if you believe everything you read, especially on the cesspool that is Twitter, like he's apparently asking 3 years at $60 million. $20 million a year for a guy like Schwarber is a respectable number that the Cubs could pay. And again, to Juice's point, that's a team-friendly contract at only 3 years where, God forbid, shit hits the fan. Maybe you could move it in a year if you needed to. So I think that one in terms of it being a possibility. And I actually like, this is a good question. And maybe this is kind of how we can wrap up the show. A great question here. Hey, Jake, be sure to look in your DMs here in a little bit too. We were talking about a Cubs on Tap fantasy baseball league, and you feel like a perfect candidate to be a member of it. But it is a question from our boy Baseball Boosh. Go follow him on Twitter, by the way, if you're a Cubs on Tap listener.
Definitely.
This is for podcast and live stream people. They do great work over there. Jake's the fucking man. So be sure to go follow him. He's at Baseball Boosh, BUJ. On Twitter. I think there's an underscore in there somewhere too. Jake, feel free to drop your Twitter handle in the comments and we'll post it at some point. But he says, are you guys all out on KB as a pipe dream?
No, I mean,
the floor is yours.
There's like an unlimited, sorry to go first here, but there's like an unlimited amount of pipe dream guys, I feel like. Like just,
yes, there are.
So many former Cubs, like on the market and so many good options on
and
the
they're
market.
all former, you just said, all former Cubs. Like this whole free agency class is like former Cubs.
I'm definitely still in. I think we all would any of us be opposed to KB coming back? I'd love it.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I do think he's going to end up in Philly, though. I do. It's going to be painful to watch it too, because that's exactly what back 3 years ago that we were looking at with
when Bryce went there.
When Bryce ended up going there.
Well, and I like, to me, the KB, here we go. For those that are watching or listening, it's at baseball_boosh. I was right. See, I've seen your Twitter handle enough, Jake. I know what it is by now. But back to our KB topic here. I think in KB's case, the two most likely scenarios right now are obviously, yes, Philadelphia. You can go play with his boy Bryce. And the only thing about Philly that feels weird is Alec Boehm had a really nice season for them last year at third base. So, like, if Philly is bringing in KB, he's an everyday outfielder if they're bringing in KB. Like, he's your everyday left fielder / DH. Like, he's not – or he's playing a little first. Like, he's not playing third because I think that Boehm kid is going to be sick this year. But I think it's there or the Mariners. I really do think Seattle is still very much in play. He's a West Coast guy.
I just never saw it. Like, it would be so weird to see him in that uniform, right?
What did they win last year? 85 games?
I know. It makes sense. Don't get me wrong.
They lose Seager to retirement. Like, third base is a glaring hole in Seattle right now.
Don't get me wrong. It makes so much sense. But is it not weird to think of him in that uniform?
Thinking of KB in any uniform that's not a Cubs uniform to me is weird.
No, but that
it was weird seeing him
in
in a Giants uniform. I did love the fact. Can we just quickly address? I know we've probably brought it up before, but I still love it. The fact that two of the three like big guns that got traded at the deadline switched their numbers to 23.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was almost like they're paying tribute to Chicago without.
And a lot of them like continued to wear the blue, batting gloves. And,
yeah. A lot of them wore their like Cub shit still, and like it was kind of cool. There was a lot of sentiment that like they still appreciated Chicago, which I think is pretty.
You know what they really should have done, Ron? They really should have just all worn 21 to kind of be like, all right, Sammy Sosa, like fuck you, upper management, like. But yeah, it was great. Yeah,
it was good. I thought it was good. Joe, I want to hear your thought on the KB pipe dream.
I think Seattle would be awesome for him. I think that's they rally around people, and he's a guy you rally for.
Because Kyle Seager was beloved in Seattle,
right? And KB is just a guy you rally for, So I would be super excited for him if he got to Seattle, but he still fits with the Cubs. There's never a time that he would not fit with the Cubs.
He's in need.
Right.
Because he fills holes. I mean, he can hit for average. He can hit for power. I mean, he plays how many different positions, and now that guys like Rizzo are gone, like he can play days at first base. Like that's not a weird thing by any means. He can play left field on a daily basis. He can play right field. I don't think you need him to play center anymore, but like he can at least play the corner outfield spots and then the corner infield spots, and then DH on days that you want to give his legs a break. Like you can keep his bat in the lineup. And he, to me, is a guy, as long as he doesn't continue to get injured, because I know a lot of criticism with his swing and the shoulder and things like that. But like, as long as that doesn't play a huge factor, like he's a player to me that ages well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's a guy that is going to just like fall off the face of the earth, because like he doesn't have back issues, right? Like that's, to me, honest to God, that is the only reason I am adverse to bringing Riz back, is like the back as he gets older is going to be really intriguing to see. Would I love a platinum glove at first base every day again? Absolutely. And it's Riz. He's Mr. Cub 2.0. But like injuries are, again, that was the whole argument I had about Correa. The guy's played over 140 games, twice in his career? And he's only 27. Like that's only going to get worse as he gets older. Like, you know what I mean? So, but I agree with all you guys. I think KB, I think there's a chance. Because he's even personally said that he hasn't ruled out a return to the Cubs. So, like, I'm sure they're at least going to have a conversation on the phone, even if it ends with them saying, hey, we appreciate your time in Chicago. Good luck on the market. At least there's got to be a conversation. Like, I honestly think that Riz and Bryant are at least the two of the guys that they all shipped off that they're calling and saying, hey, maybe.
And it is so shocking to me that he's still on the market, too. I mean, all the playoff experience, all the versatility, I figured he would have been one of the earliest names off of the board. And he is like the primal type of guy who sets a culture too.
Right. And it's like there was never any signs that like anybody was pursuing him like crazy. Like we want this guy right now, which is just crazy. Not to say that's not happening. It's just there's not a lot of smoke around it. It's definitely happening. There's just not a lot of stuff out there. Like Chris Bryant's going to sign in the next 48 hours kind of thing, like that we see a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely amazes me that he's not on a team yet. He would, if I were contending too, if I were in the market I just won my division, I would throw the boat at that guy because he just gets it. He's been there. Name it in the playoffs. He's been there.
Right.
And that's just the fact of it is to me, it's maddening to me that he's not. And he plays so many positions. How many guys are out there right now that you can stick him literally anywhere around the diamond and he'll excel?
Well.
He's a fit for any team.
It just doesn't make it does not make, especially in like the whole like StatCast, baseball like sabermetrics era that we live in now. Like every single number he posts is like, yeah, pay him. You know what I mean? It's worth it.
The only player I would argue that would have been anywhere near KB in the terms of like that value where he can play any position on the field and be useful was Chris Taylor, but he's already been nabbed back up by the Dodgers. They made sure quick to keep him. They were like, no, you're not going anywhere. We're keeping you in LA. Right. And it makes total sense. So I agree with you. I think KB, just from the standpoint of, again, the versatility, like literally any team in the league can make an argument for him if they need outfield help, if they need third base, if they need first base, if they just need another bat in the lineup and potentially be a DH. Like he fills all 5 of those voids for any team. Like realistically, and I know San Fran gave up on him and wasn't re-signing him and whatever, but like every team in the league can make a case for signing Chris Bryant. And I think that's going to be incredibly, and he's only 30. Like he's got at least probably another 3, 4, maybe 5 probably really good years in him. Like to me, that's a guy that I agree with you, Juice. Like I'm surprised he's still in the market. Again, I'm surprised a lot of these guys, like Clayton Kershaw is the biggest move that's really happened today. And it was just him going back to LA.
Well, Carlos Rodon.
Well, and Rodon going to San Fran, sure. But like,
sorry, just something that popped in my head, who's a free agent who would just be cool to have on the team. Nelson Cruz.
That's true. Like, see how I keep thought about that. Like, just put him at DH every day and let him smoke bombs onto the left field bleachers for the whole season, and then trade him at the deadline and get prospects.
And you're telling me he wouldn't sign he's going to sign a 1-year deal.
Yeah, because he's
Boomstick
41. He's 41.
Or he's 41. Yeah. That man. You want to talk about aging like fine wine? That man is like fine wine.
He is. Now that David Ortiz has been retired, he is the DH you think of, right? Why not go get like
him and JD Martinez are like the two guys now.
Good point. Not to say he would be cheap, but if the season's about to start, he hasn't signed yet. You got some extra money.
12 mil. I'd throw him 12 mil for a year. I would love that. Like, I don't care if he hits 260. Like, if he nukes 30 balls for the Cubs or like 25 before the deadline and then gets shipped, I'd be like, thanks for your service. You were fun to watch.
Right, because there's going to be a lot of teams in the NL who just don't know what to do with the DH. It's going to be a revolving door, and I think that's fine. But why not in the first year make it a little less chaotic?
Yeah, fuck it. Why not? I like that. I love that move. I would not be mad about Nelson Cruz in a Cubs uniform. I think that would just, again, and it's funny because like I remember, and this was not like on a podcast or anything, but I remember having a conversation with like either a buddy or like my dad or something, and I said that I was like, "Fuck it, throw a couple million at Nelson Cruz for a year and let him DH at Wrigley." Like, you know how many balls he's nuking onto Waveland each year? Plenty. Like that dude's gonna hit so many, especially when the wind's blowing out. Like that dude's played in some of the hardest ballparks to hit home runs, and he has no problem hitting them. So like,
here's something. Sorry, real quick on Correa. This is from Cubs Zone. John Morosi is on Marquee like right now, I guess. The expectation for Correa is that he'll get something like Lindor or better, which is insane.
Wow.
And Lindor got what, 340, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah, I don't blame the Cubs for not wanting to.
No, I'm good on that. I like Correa, man. He's a good player. He's a really good player, obviously.
That's a lot of money to tie up in one guy. Because you figure if he's getting that money, he's getting the term too.
Yeah.
He's got to. No team's going to pay him 42 a year.
No.
Not a fucking chance.
But it does make sense if you look at the position players in the next couple free agent classes.
Oh, yeah, they're not.
I mean, if you're going to pay,
this is the
year to do
it. It is actually a very good free agent class this year. Like it is a very solid group entering the 2022 season that are still available. So, and even guys that signed before the break, like there was a lot of really good names like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of good players that got nabbed up really quickly. Early in the free agency process. So I think it's certainly interesting to see. But gentlemen, I will turn it quickly over to each of you. Any kind of final thoughts before we get out of here? I know anybody that's listening to this as a podcast is probably giggling because this is probably stale by the time you listen to it. It's going to be a crazy weekend, and we'll be back next week at some point. We're going to try and get a couple guests on, here in March before really shit starts picking up on April 7th. I know I'm going to be at opening day. I've already made that conscious decision. I know Juice has talked about it as well. It's a Thursday and a beautiful 120 start.
I'm talking about it right now. So, hey, beautiful. I'm not saying I'm going, but I'm talking about it. You hear me?
I like it. Hey, I'm here for it. We're going to try and get as many
on tap crew there. I might have to go too then.
Hey, Joey, you and I have to talk off air because I've already thought about getting a fucking hotel room near Wrigley. So maybe I know you're coming in from out of town.
Yeah,
so
maybe that's a good possibility then.
Maybe, but so that should be fun. So that's kind of my final thought. Baseball's coming. We're going to be back too. So I just want to give the floor to you guys before we get out of here with the pleasantries.
Yes, it looks like I'm out, boys. I got a game that day, April 7th, 2:00, Morton College.
Maybe Friday. I'll be there Friday too. I'm going to both games.
Now let me check Friday. God damn it.
8th. Yeah. Well,
I don't have anything on Friday.
Stroh's going to pitch one of those 2 days, so I'm just going to pitch.
He'll probably pitch Friday. Yeah.
That would be perfect. Friday 120 start the year.
Right.
Put me at Murphy's Bleachers with a cold beer at 10 a.m. Like that just screams a Friday in my eyes.
Will we be able to find the hotel by the end of the game and afterwards and all that stuff?
Depends.
Good question.
As Johnny Nani would always say, per Bobby Margarita for weekend bender purposes only. I cannot confirm that would happen. So we would have to see what goes on. But gentlemen, quick thoughts before we wrap up with the usual pleasantries here at Cubs on Tap.
It's great to talk about real baseball.
Yes.
It's just great. And it's going to feel like everything's happening a mile in a minute because of how quickly things are going to have to start happening. So it's just going to be awesome. It's going to be like stuff's happening so fast and then it's opening day. It's just, there's not going to be a lull.
Agreed.
Yeah. Dude, like you said, it's great to be back talking baseball. We're literally going to be going right into spring training and then opening day. So, after all this free agency frenzy and as it's going on. So, dude, this is a great time to be a Cubs fan. I don't care what people say about, the roster's depleted. You hear it throughout the media, too. People on Twitter that are fans of other teams are like, what team are the Cubs putting out there this year? It's going to be dog shit. I'm excited. I still am excited. I think there's moves to be made. We know that. So the people that are following closely, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, to build on that, Joey, I remember going to a lot of games in 2014 and 2013 and seeing some of these guys for a millisecond and then buying tickets when everybody jumped on in the end of 2015 when they went on that crazy run, and just enjoying that was almost as enjoyable as them winning the whole thing because you really watched these guys grow. You watched them become the players and the people that they were. And I think that's what made last season at the trade deadline so difficult. You not only traded players that you loved, you traded, people who contributed to the community and guys that you watched build families and things like that. So that's why baseball, and Cub baseball in particular, over the last couple of years has kind of presented to us. And I'm hoping that the next great Cubs team, it's the start this year. And it's the watching these guys come up like Brendan Davis and contribute and have these early successes that we jump on these shows after and go, man, we're feeling really good about the future. Because that was always fun to sit there and talk in my group chats or with my family and friends about watching Chris Bryant, nuke a ball early on in 2015 and go, man, it's going to be fun for a while here. And to end with my final thoughts, those are it. Plus, as I always end, St. Louis sucks.
St. Louis does suck. And no, gentlemen, I'm glad we were able to jump on, all four of us. This is fun. Kind of the official Baseball is Back episode here for Cubs on Tap. So that's certainly cool too. And naturally, I got to get the lung capacity ready for this one. Naturally, Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast of the On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out all of our great work over at www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. You can follow our pod-specific account at Cubbies on Tap. That's on Twitter and on Instagram. You can follow us on both of those platforms as well. I am at Loose on Tap on Twitter. Joey is at Joey Knows Nothing. Joe is at Joe on Tap. Juice is at Juice on Tap. All on Twitter. You can follow all of us there. Again, big shout out to Baseball Bouge. Go follow guys like them. They do incredible stuff here at Cubs on Tap. And follow all of our other great Cubs contributors as well. Our new writer, Tyler. Be sure you can check out his Twitter handle. I don't know it by heart yet. I will at some point. You can go ahead and find that over at On Tap Sportsnet on social media. And again, we're not just Cubs. Bears, Blackhawks, Bulls, and yes, Cubs fans, let's be honest. We all have at least one friend that's a White Sox fan. I have too many of them because I live on the South Side. We also have great White Sox coverage too. So be sure to send all your friends who love Chicago sports over to us here at On Tap Sportsnet. Be sure also, now that mobile sign up is allowed again in the state of Illinois, be sure to go check out our friends over at Bet Rivers and use promo code ONTAP. You get $250 deposit match, up to $250 when you sign up and make a new account with our friends over at Bet Rivers. So be sure to do that. And once again, you can find us www.ontapsportsnet.com, at OnTapSportsNet on social media, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Guys, we still got it. I haven't done it in a while, but we still got it.
Flawless.
From myself.
Way to go, say Jack.
From myself, Ron Luce, from Joey Ricotta, from the Juice Man himself, and from Joe Maris. We thank you for listening to Cubs on Tap. Baseball is back. We will be back with you all season long right here on the On Tap Sports Network. And until next time, let's go Cubbies and fuck the Cardinals.
Let's go Cubs.
Let's go Cubs.